Okay, so guys, let's start. It's 2:02 UK time, so very welcome to this BECS network orchestration seminar. I hope many of you had a chance to attend Connected Britain last week, and many of you probably also visited our stand. So today we will actually continue introductory talk around our orchestration platform, and hopefully we'll also be able to demonstrate how BECS Network Orchestrator will allow you to make your network operations leaner, but also more cost effective ultimately. Before we dive into details, let me introduce the team behind this seminar. So my name is Andrzej Mazur, and I'm responsible for PacketFront Poland. I'm running the R&D center over here, and also I'm responsible for the sales activities in Central Europe. With me, we have joining from Stockholm, Timo Kusela, our VP of Global Sales. Hello. And our welcome, Timo. And then we have also Tony Green, our support or pre-sales manager, I should rather say.
Perfect. Hello.
So during the presentation, we will actually take your questions, but we will answer them at the end of each section. So when you have a question, please post them in the chat window, and then we will address them at the end of each chapter. So Tony, why don't you move us to the company overview slide? Yes, so a few words about the PacketFront. So basically we're a software company specializing on OSS and BSS systems, over 20 years of market experience addressing the global client base. We do actually address tier ones, but we also have plenty of smaller accounts. So basically the BECS orchestrator we are going to describe today, it caters for the needs of various company sizes. You don't have to be a large operator to actually benefit from such solution. We actually are headquartered in Stockholm, Sweden. That's actually where we have a central office, but that's also one of our R&D hubs. Another R&D location is Warsaw, Poland. That's where I sit. In both offices, we do have all technical functions basically needed to address your needs, meaning development, of course, support, and professional services. We do actually have also the sales office in UK, and that's actually where part of the sales team sits and also where the pre-sales engineers are located as well. So having said that, let's look into the orchestrator itself, and I will hand over now for that part to Tony.
Excellent. Thank you, Andrzej. So we'll start off having a look at the actual complexity, the issues that kind of surround this area. Okay, so just having a look at the monster that can come as a result of managing networks. So we've got many different areas to try and keep track of and work on. And then there's also issues that come up with that. So we've got to keep an eye on our service activation, our asset tracking, network documentation, and making sure that's correct so that you know how to troubleshoot, you know that things are as they should be. Managing the configuration, actually doing that in an intelligent manner, being able to work on that and know exactly where the configuration is at any time. Of course, really important as well, firmware management, ensuring that your devices are kept up to date and are there hardened against the latest security threats that are out there in the wild. Resource management, keeping track of your IP addresses, what VLANs are where, AS numbers, any of these particular things that you need to keep control of, those are things that come up. So then coming with that, you've then got other issues that might strike you. So you've got multiple vendors. So different ways that vendors talk can be very subtly different. That means that sort of writing your own automation becomes quite difficult to do. There may be multiple networks. For example, if you're growing via acquisition, you might have different network types and configurations, but you want to sell the same services on top of that. Staff shortages, churn, how do you cope with that? How do you cope without burning out your staff, etc.? And then there's complex scenarios that come with that, and onboarding new networks, again, with that eye on acquisition. And then finally, device onboarding. How do you get the devices on the network in a quick, efficient manner?
And you know, for me, the monster is really a cost. That's what at the end it becomes, right? And especially in the part of the world I'm coming from, it's very, very difficult to drive revenues these days. So if you want to stay profitable, you really need to work with your cost base. And hopefully throughout the presentation, you will realize that the solution like BECS really help you to actually make your organization leaner.
Yeah, no, perfect, Andre. Thanks for that. Being the typical techie, I always forget the cost aspect, right? Mm-hmm. So fantastic. So what is BECS? We've mentioned the fact that it's an OSS system and that it's multi-vendor and that. And so one of the things that I like to think about, and an easy way to consider what BECS is that it's kind of your translator for all of network hardware. Right, so I've got on the screen here a little map of Europe, right? And if we were in the scenario of trying to get things done in different countries, well, you're probably either going to have to force all of them to speak the same language, or you're going to have a translator in there to make things happen and make sure that things don't get missed. And so that's where BECS kind of fits in. You speak one language to us, and we will speak all of the different languages that are required to make the various different vendors do the task that you want them to do, right? So this makes it perfect for things like mergers and acquisitions, which gives me an opportunity to plug an upcoming talk that we've got coming up with looking at mergers and acquisitions with one of our key customers, Southern, doing a testimonial. Great thing to detangle yourself from vendor lock-in. Again, great point Andre was making earlier about driving down cost. One of the things that Timo will be going through later in his presentation with a tool that we've built to help you understand the savings that can be done. One of those things is being able to negotiate with a vendor who knows that you're able to move around, gives you more power, right? And then we can deliver the same service over different topologies. So for example, if you're dealing with customers on a PON network and then you acquire, say, for example, a point-to-point network, is that BECS can give you the ability to sell the same services over the top of those two completely different types of networks in the same way that's transparent to your customers and your engineers. So let's have a delve then into the various areas that BECS takes control of. So the key bread and butter main point is configuration management. So that point of talking to the devices, making sure they've got the correct configuration on them. Okay. We've got resource management that goes hand in hand with that. So IP addressing, VLANs, those kind of things. We've then got service provisioning. So the dynamic provisioning of services, thus talking, making sure that the configuration is up to date on the devices to deliver such services. And we can do that in a dynamic and clever way, which we'll talk about later with regards to intent. We're also focused on security. So we provide some features to help you ensure that your network is secure, things like auditing the configuration, those kind of bits and pieces, and also some bits inside the product itself to keep accurate logs on who's doing what, where, and when. We support zero-touch provisioning, so that ability to turn up devices by just plugging them into the network in the correct location, which is fantastic for reducing the amount of efforts required to bring your network up. And then finally, we've got the ability to do service assurance, that part of actually double checking what's happened and ensuring that when a service is actually delivered across the network, it is functioning as it should be.
So by now you might be of the impression that this is super complex solution catering to various needs, and it's very difficult to grasp. The good news is that you can start small with trying to address one particular pain point you might have, for example, auto provisioning or inventory management. And then as you get comfortable with the solution, you add more and more use cases and you start managing entire network or all your needs at the end.
Absolutely, absolutely perfect. So, and then in addition to that, in terms of the actual hardware, then the different hardware types as well that we communicate with. So on the screen here is a completely non-exhaustive list, right, of the vendors and integrations that we've got. And then it's possible for yourself, even yourself, to add your own element managers in, which is what we call the parts that communicate with these devices, as well as us being able to build those for you. Okay, and not an immense task that needs months and months and months to years to actually get to realize. It's relatively short in that time frame.
And non-exhaustive is actually a key word here, Tony, because I mean, I think it will never be complete, since every customer means slightly different needs, right? Different device fleet. So basically, typical production cycle for onboarding a new device, so to say, is anywhere between 1 to 3 months, right? So if you actually approach us with the device we have not included into the system yet, the good news is the time you will wait for introduction of support for that device is not that very long.
Yeah, indeed. So then, Andre, you'd also mentioned a little bit earlier about sort of the use cases and starting small and various things like that. So just wanted to highlight then, expand on that kind of idea and bring out the fact that while the product is actually capable of managing everything from switches to routers to PON through your access layer, your Ps and PE layer, right up into your core, you can actually start small, work from, say, a point product and work on a specific area, and then slowly build that automation up. Obviously, the real win is being able to control your entire network through orchestration, through something like BECS, and that would give you the ability to be able to do an end-to-end delivery without having to do any manual work whatsoever. You can essentially say, I want this service to appear at this port, and then BECS will identify all of the parts in the chain that need to have that configuration change to make that work, and then configure them accordingly. So we've got kind of concepts built into the base system, like it understands things like fiber to the home and DSL, etc., and those concepts of the devices that are required to make that happen, right? So that we can then push out the appropriate configuration in the appropriate ways. So I wanted to also mention the fact that we are a programmable and extensible system. Okay, so we have standard functionality that you get out of the box in various applications and service models, you know, for different things such as a layer 2 service right up to layer 3 VPN services, etc. We've got the resource management in there that I mentioned, that topology awareness, that ability to understand which devices are in a chain to make things happen. We've talked about element managers, that part that actually does that communication with the device. And then you've got your wizards, the things that basically help your staff do the day-to-day work.
And Tony, maybe at this point we should also mention that we talked earlier about the vendor locking, actually. So what's good about this platform is it doesn't lock you in either, right? If you have ambition to write your own automation scripts, absolutely possible, right? You can actually get that competence and actually use Wizard to do that. However, if you have a crew which is basically not interested in going very deep into networking, you can still use our GUI or other ways, simpler ways to actually access the system and carry on with your daily operations.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So that daily operations being those standard functionality that I've mentioned there, and then bringing up now this ability to add in extensions. So quite often we'll be dealing with customers who want to add BECS into a chain of different platforms that are performing actions. So we've got APIs, built in by default, but you can extend that to fit your needs how you want. Again, same with service models, defining services that are appropriate for your particular use cases. Wizards, we've mentioned the fact that wizards help guide your engineers through the day-to-day workflow. Totally customizable. You can build your own, add to the system. So we're not locking you into the way of working. It's all about making sure that you can actually go ahead and interact with the system the way that is most useful for you.
And actually, to the contrary, I think what's actually very appealing, in my opinion, in BECS is that fact that you decouple hardware from software. So every few years, your TCO expires, and you are considering swapping the current device fleet to maybe some new vendor. That becomes much easier with the solution like BECS, since the software stays untouched and you are just swapping hardware.
Absolutely, absolutely. So then, to step a little bit deeper into the way that this system works, one of the key things is we work with a concept called intent. So rather than just pushing stuff out to devices, we work on an intent basis and then sync that intent with our devices. So let's have a look at the difference between the two here. Okay, so we might have a basic template system, something maybe built on a scripting engine, maybe sort of Ansible playbook, something like that, where you've defined a script that will turn something up, right? But what you're not doing is you're not going ahead and actually communicating with the device necessarily to check what's going on. So you design your base template, and then you push that straight out to the device. Right, so there's no verify built in, there's no reference point. So once you've run 10, 15 of these scripts to deliver services on a particular box, then which ones run starts to become muddy, maybe unclear as to what's gone on. So with BECS being intent based, we're actually keeping in sync all the way through. We've got an understanding of what's going on. We know where things are. So we start in the same place. We design our base config and we map our services, but we map them first to the intent, essentially, which you can think of as the sum of all config. And it's one of the key things for us is that this then offers a clean backup of the configuration that should exist on the device. So beyond the fact that we've then got this intent to refer back to keep check of things, it also means we've always got a backup of what the live configuration should look like at the time. So we then realize that on the device, we verify and deliver. What this also gives us the ability to do is that because we're verifying what's already there on the device, is that we don't have to run commands that don't need to be run. We only run the commands that actually really need to be there to ensure that the difference is made. So then I'm just going to step away from the actual system itself and into the other areas that we can kind of help with, right? And how we implement in a network. So this is to introduce the professional services team and essentially that helping hand on the journey and getting things done. Now, one of the key things to mention about our professional services team is that they have done the onboarding of many customers over many years on many different networks all across Europe and the UK and out as far as US, etc. So as a result of that, there's a wealth of experience that means that getting a network onboarding can be done swiftly, well, with great results. So what we can offer network investigation, help you go through and see what's there on your network and make clear documentation of such. Discover what services are out there. Consultations speak to you about the best ways of implementing things and doing things. We can then help you with building tailor-made scripts and tools for your onboarding process, and also extending the system to help you with the way you want it to be. And then finally, one of the key ones, we can also offer an engineer in place to help you if you're running out of staff and time.
And speaking for a second, not as a salesperson, but more as a line manager, I mean, one thing I'm particularly proud of is the group of people we managed to build within the professional services. They often come from operators like you. They do understand operator environment. They are able to relate to your pains. And they are very capable group of engineers supported by the process which Tony mentioned is really battle proven. So I think we can be confident you are in a good hands if you partner with us.
Absolutely. Perfect. So then talking about that structured way that our engineers work in, the kind of the flow that kind of this looks like, you know, what would it look like for onboarding your network? So first we start with analyzing that network design, having a look at what you've got out there. What hardware vendors have you got? What's the configuration look like? How do they interact with each other? We'll then look at the services themselves that you're delivering. How are those configured? What does that look like? How do you activate a service, deactivate, etc.? We'll then start building the element templates, right? So those things that say, this particular device has this many ports on it, that kind of thing, that basic setup and the base configurations for those devices. We'll then go and create the infrastructure, a replica of what's in the real world, but there in BECS, so that we've got that topology so we understand how to deliver the services correctly. We'll then create those service mappings and then verify the results by being able to do a diff, essentially look at the configuration on the boxes that's actually out there versus the configuration we think should be on there, and then, you know, actually work from there. And once we're finally happy that everything is perfect and not going to go bang, we'll switch over to full control.
So sounds like a complex operation, but again, very well tested on many accounts. And it takes anywhere between 3 to 12 months to actually take you through this transformation journey, depending on your network size.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So then finally, I just want to have a little point on security, and one of our key focuses at this moment in time, particularly with in the UK, we've got TSA. And of course, there is NIS2 too. And working sort of closely with our partners, we are solving many of these problems. Now, I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail right now. We've got a separate webinar on this very subject coming up on the 27th of this month that's worth delving into, because we'll not only go over what PacketFront can do for you in terms of the security side of things, but just sort of some of the journey that PXC have been on through that. So there's some really good information in there that's useful for anyone. So obviously there's some areas that we really work well in, and that's sort of like documentation of the network, protecting unauthorized access, and monitoring the network for compromises, etc., as I mentioned earlier. But yeah, do come along to that talk later in the month, because there's a great delve into that and how we can help.
Super. So Tony, thank you very much for this intro. I think now it's time to check if we got any questions before we dive into Timo's part, but no questions in the chat. Guys, any questions from your side before we move on? All right, that's no. Very good. So guys, now you have understanding what the tools can offer. Now let's see how we can monetize, right? Because at the end, it's all about making operation more cost efficient and generate some monetary gains. So Timo, share with us your view on that.
Yes, thank you, Andre and Tony. So as said, if Tony talked about technology, I'm only going to talk about money. So that's my task here. And what we have done is a business case calculator that we have available on our web page. And I'm going to go through this business case calculator, and hopefully you can test it afterwards yourself. So you can find this business case calculator on our homepage under resources, and here you have this PacketWiz calculator. So if I use that link, I come to the main page, and here you can select between two versions of the calculator, either for B2C customer networks or B2B customer networks. And I'm going to show this B2C version of this calculator. If I enter here, I come to the main page of this calculator, and on this page I can provide different values for the business case calculator. So for example, the average employer cost for operations team, and this cost should of course not only include the base salary but also the employer fees, workspace, and all that. So I can slide here different values depending on what I estimate that the average cost is. There's also one field for the annual turnover from the B2C customers. And I'm just giving here a little bit random values in this case. There's also a question about the average hardware spending, especially for OLTs and ONTs, or if you're using point-to-point network to access devices and CPEs. And then a selector for PON or point-to-point network. And I will come back to that in a moment, why this is important to select. But I select now PON network. And the number of customers, and these are active paying customers that we are focusing on here. And then the customer growth. And last, churn. So how many % of the customer base do we expect to lose every year? And when I've entered all these values, I can click to this calculate, and that will then give me the average saving. So this is also taking into account the average implementation and licensing cost. So this is the pure saving that we are showing here. And then by using this slide, you can then see how this develops over the years. I can also download a report by providing the email address. But before we look at that report, I'll just show you how did we get all these numbers. So if you scroll down on the page, you will see a breakdown. And as I said, you select between PON and point-to-point network. And the reason is that usually in PON networks, you're using very large OLTs. You can have tens of thousands of customers in one OLT. So then doing functions like zero touch or automated firmware upgrades doesn't make that much sense. On the other hand, if you're looking at point-to-point networks where you're using access devices which have like 24 or 48 ports, you have much bigger number of these access devices. So then zero touch and automated firmware upgrades make sense. So because we now selected PON, the number of access switches is set to 0. As said, we will then use these calculations to estimate the savings, for example, I'm not going through all these values because it takes too long time, but I'll just pick some of the values that we are using. So for example, for zero touch configuration and firmware upgrades, we estimate that the average lifetime for an ONT is 8 years, that you can save 10 minutes per ONT by doing zero touch configuration. We estimate that you make 1 firmware upgrade per year, and you can save 5 minutes per ONT by doing the automation. And then there are, as I said, other values that I don't go through here, but I just want to point out one one additional value, and it's this bargaining power that Tony already mentioned. So if you think that you are in a situation where you're using a single hardware vendor and they know that they have a monopoly, you have to buy from them. That's not the best position to be at when you try to negotiate the prices. But if you have a tool like BECS, which is multi-vendor capable, just the sheer fact that you have that tool gives you leverage in discussions with the hardware vendor, even if you then would choose not to change the vendor.
Absolutely.
So I think that is a very powerful tool that you can use. Okay, so these are the basic assumptions that we are making. And as I said, you can download the report. I have already downloaded one. And this is how it looks like. So this comes to your email address as a PDF file. And in this document, you can then see the values that you gave and the results that were received on this calculator, and also all these assumptions that I just showed on the home page. So you get full report of what the results are and how we got to those results. Now, somebody could say, okay, but come on, we calculate 10 years lifetime for ONTs, and we have already automated the firmware upgrade, so this is not really applicable for us. So for that reason, we also have an Excel version of this business case calculator. So you can always contact us, and we can then do a customized business case which accounts your current situation and make the calculations based on that. So again, please contact us if you want any more detailed business case calculations. And on this report, you also see in the beginning some aspects that are not calculated in the business case, because it's very difficult to provide monetary value for some things, like how much is improved customer satisfaction worth, or the fact that you can do faster introduction of new services, especially in a multi-vendor environment. So there are also these other factors that are very difficult to quantify.
And we discussed that, Timo, sorry to interrupt you actually, but security, right, is one of the topics, right, which definitely has a monetary value, but it's very difficult to assess how much is that.
Yes, exactly. So that was a very good point, and we will definitely add it to the list. And also, as Tony already mentioned, we will have a separate session just about security and the importance of that coming on the 27th. So if you haven't already done so, please sign for that webinar as well. We will have the head of security from PXE, one of the tier 1 operators in UK, coming to present and explain how they see security, and also to some extent how PacketFront can support any type of operator in that security thinking. Yeah, absolutely. So please test the tool, and if you have any feedback, please let us know. It'd be really great to hear from you. So Timo, back to you, Andre. Yes.
Timo, thank you very much. I think both parts, this technical part and what you've covered, the business case, is the mere invitation to the further detailed discussion, right? So we urge you to, of course, review the material, but most of all, contact us for detailed demo, but also we can definitely walk you through the details of the business case and customize it, as Timo mentioned, so it really reflects your situation. Thank you very much for today. That actually brings us to the end of this session. Before we close, however, I just want to double check that we do not have questions from audience. So please, this is the chance to ask.
And of course, if you don't have any questions now, but you want to later, of course, absolutely contact us for more detailed information based on your specific use case. Obviously, what I've delivered here and what we've all delivered is very generic. But of course, we've dealt with many different networks and know many different things. So you might have specific questions for your use case. So absolutely contact us. And feel free we can delve in more detail to your specific use case.
Super. Thank you very much. We then wrap up this session. Tony, thank you. Timo, thank you very much for delivering your parts, and looking forward to meet you in the near future on more detailed meetings. Thank you.